Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who had joined us from around the world. Hope you all are doing fine and having a great time at Scottish Summit. My session is about no-code data preparation in a modern data warehouse. This session is based on the Power Query feature in Azure Data Factory, which is still in public preview. Have been interested about the feature ever since it was out available. Um, as public preview in 2019. So in this session, I will be sharing my point of view on where should Power Query in Azure Data Factory fit in a modern data warehouse. Moving on to the sponsors of the event, thank you very much for Scriptrunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Ridgefire, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions for sponsoring this great event. So thank you very much once again. For those who don't know me, I'm Thimantha Vidanagamage. I love working with Microsoft Data Platform technologies such as Microsoft Power BI, Azure Analysis Services, and Azure Data Factory. Also, I'm a speaker introduced from the first edition of New Stars of Data organized by Ben and William. So really grateful for them in terms of whatever I have achieved up to date as a speaker. Also, out of all the details that you see in the screen right now, the most important thing is my Twitter handle at Thimantha. So please follow me on Twitter at Thimantha. Moving further, please get down to your social media and use hashtags Scottish Summit 2021 to spread the news, guys. Let's get this viral and let's get this moving. And moving into the agenda for today, firstly, I will take you to the modern data warehouse and its architecture. Later on, we'll look at data preparation in a modern data warehouse. And finally, I'll be wrapping up this session by showing you how you can engage in no-code data preparation in a modern data warehouse. Firstly, before moving any further, it is necessary for us to understand what is a modern data warehouse. A modern data warehouse is a data platform that is specifically catering for analytical purposes. You can bring to all types of data into a modern data warehouse, including structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. When it comes to scalability and flexibility, there is a higher level of scalability and flexibility in a modern data warehouse. Specifically, in terms of scalability, you can scale in almost every Azure component, every Azure resource that you use in a modern data warehouse. Also, in terms of flexibility, it's actually coming from the data lake concept where you can bring in any type of data into the modern data warehouse. Now, let's move into the reference architecture of the modern data warehouse. So, if I explain you from the beginning what's happening in this architecture, firstly, data is ingested from multiple data sources with the use of Azure Data Factory into the Azure Data Lake storage. The ingested data into the Azure Data Lake storage is prepared with the use of Azure Databricks and moved into Azure Synapse Analytics, which was previously known as Azure SQL Data Warehouse, so that the data can be handled as a single hub. Afterwards, semantic models will be developed referring to Azure Synapse Analytics, which will be consumed by Power BI and also which will be consumed for self-service BI. So that is the basic flow in this architecture. But keep in mind, the important thing in this architecture that you see in the screen right now is the component, the modern data warehouse component. As you can see, the components are ingest, store, prep and train, and model and serve. Those are the key areas that you need to focus upon. not the technologies. Because as per the requirement, you can fit in different Azure technologies or different kind of technologies as per the requirement. So, for example, in this session, what we'll be talking about is replacing the Azure Databricks that you see in the screen right now that's used for data preparation, to replace it by the upcoming Power Query in Azure Data Factory. So likewise, there can be changes, there can be, you can shift technologies as per the client requirement and as per the requirement that's coming up. Also, now this is the entire flow of your modern data warehouse. This is the entire flow of your architecture. In this architecture, what we'll be focusing on this session is specifically this section, which is data ingestion, data storage, and data preparation. You might be thinking, why am I getting data ingestion into account? Because that's a separate component from data preparation and data preparation. And if this session is about data preparation, why am I considering data ingestion? Actually, the answer for that is, yeah, data ingestion is pretty important, because the type of data you ingest, the structure to which you ingest data, and how you ingest the data, all affect the data preparation, because the data ingested will be the source for any data preparation task. So that is the reason behind getting data ingested into the process. Moving further, now it's time for us to we before getting into the actual data preparation work, we should know what data preparation is. So just to get started, uh, data preparation uh, is where data preparation is where data is prepared for analytical purposes. So data, just take data just think data extracted. I'm sorry. Data preparation is used for to prepare data for analytical purposes. So all the data that are available in the data sources are not prepared for analytical purposes. Most of the time, if you take a database, they are prepared for transactional processing, transactional purposes. So it's necessary for us to convert this data, to get prepare this data uh, for that in a way which it is suitable for analytical purposes. So, for example, if you get a database, you have a database that is uh, catering specifically transactional requirements, that is specifically used for transactional process. You need to ingest the tables in, and you need to prepare the data in a way that it will suit the analytical purposes. So that is basically data preparation. And there are two key tasks in data preparation, which are data cleansing and data transformation. Data cleansing is where you clean up the data in order to fit in your analytical requirements. And data transformation is where you transform the data from one particular state to another particular state. And the purpose of doing all this is basically to improve data quality and accuracy. There can be specific purposes for data preparation, but all these specific purposes will be reflecting back into this core purpose of improving data quality and data accuracy. So that is about data preparation for you. And now it's time for us to look at the core feature. We have enough context now to concentrate on the core feature, which is Power Query in Azure Data Factory. Firstly, to get started with, previously Power Query in Azure Data Factory was known as wrangling data flows. It was actually a part of data flows in Azure Data Factory, and so it came in as two types of data flows. One type is mapping data flows, and the other type is wrangling data flows. So two types of data flows there, but later on it moved out of data flows and now it's kept separately as Power Query in Azure Data Factory. And I will be showing you that in the demo later on. So, and the key advantage of this, the, the, the key positivity in this is that it is code free and no code, which means you can prepare your data without using any code. You don't need to know Scala, you don't need to know even SQL, you don't need to know Python, PySpark, you don't need to know any of that. You just need to know the usual Power Query, which you might have already been used even in Power BI. So it's really beneficial in that stage. So moving further, this Power Query, even it looks like Power Query for you in the front end, it actually uses, it actually converts the Power Query M language into Spark. So what that means is the backend of the backend of the Power Query in Azure Data Factory is basically based on a Spark engine. What is a Spark engine? It's a unified engine that is used for data engine, which is used for large scale data processing. So basically, that means this can fit into big data workloads as well. Also, as also this is treated as with all the other most of the other functionalities in Azure Data Factory. This is treated as a pipeline. This can be treated this is treated as a pipeline activity. Basically, if you want any execution, if you want to trigger the Power Query, you have to run this as a pipeline activity as a pipeline activity in a specific Azure Data Factory pipeline. So that's how we do it. So out of all the details I gave here, the most important thing is this is still in public preview. What does that mean? That means that you can still use it. Whatever I'm saying now, you can still do it for your industrial purposes, for industrial requirements, for client requirements. You can still integrate this feature. This is still under construction and it had improved massively ever since it was launched in 2019 November, and it's keeping on improving and it's really getting there. And once it's released as for general availability, it will be in a really good position and you can really jump into it and jump into it in terms of modern data warehouse development. So that's just something to keep in mind. So in the previous slide where I showed you the reference architecture of the modern data warehouse, you might have seen, you might remember that I highlighted you a specific area and told you that this is the specific area that will be focusing on this session. So basically, that specific area had Azure Databricks, as you might remember. But with consideration to that, and after looking at the modern data warehouse architecture, with the knowledge I have, I personally, with consideration to the knowledge I have, I personally came up with to where the Power Query feature should fit in a modern data warehouse. So let's quickly have a look at that, and so that you can get a better understanding where it would fit. And this is for you, for your information, this is just my personal point of view. And if there are any other developers who are working in modern data warehouse developments, they might have a different perspective for this as well. They might see a different point of view for this as well. If so, please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you and share the info share the knowledge. So firstly, if I take you to the flow, you have data sources as with the reference architecture which I showed you previously. And the data is ingested from data sources with the use of Azure Data Factory into the Azure Data Lake Gen 2, which is to the raw area. So, raw area. Just think of it as the raw area, and I would explain you the technicality behind this uh, after I explain the flow. And just think of it for now as the raw area. And afterwards, the data ingested into the raw area is taken in as a source by Power Query for data preparation, and the prepared data is loaded into another area in the Azure Data Lake Gen 2 called the stage area. Now, what are these row and stage areas? The actual terminology, technical, the technicality behind that is these areas are called zones. So, what are zones? Zones are there to organize the data in a Azure Data Lake. Simple as that. So, what does these two zones do? So, the row zone or the row area, as I told you previously, the row zone loads the data as is from the source into the particular respective zone, and the stage zone loads the prepared data for analytical purposes into it. So that's row and stage for you, row zone and stage zone. So there can be several other zones as per the requirement. For example, there are other zones like curated zones, and there are some other. There is another zone called landing zone. So according to the client requirement and according to the requirement we have to deliver, you have to integrate these zones. But for this particular requirement, I had kept it really simple for you guys by keeping just the row zone and the stage zone. These zones are typically simply they are just folders in the respective blob container in a Azure Data Lake. You will get what I'm saying from the very first demo of this session, which is the data storage demo. So let's jump right into it, into my Azure Storage Explorer in my local machine, where I have connected to the Azure Data Lake. So we are currently in the my Azure Data Lake, which I have used for this demo, and I have connected to my subscription. And in my subscription, I have connected to my data lake, and I have two block containers here, and one is COVID-19, which I just use for my R&D purposes, and what we'll be looking at today is the demo block container. And in the demo block container, as I told you previously, you can see the row zone and the stage zone as two separate folders. So row zone, as I told you previously, is where you load the data as is from the source, where you ingest the data as is from the source uh, into as is from the source into the data lake. So in here, I have classified the data as master and transaction according to the source table that I'll be using. And to keep you noted, I'm using Adventure Works 2017 for this purpose, which is a transaction DB. So that is where that is my source for this demo, and I have ingested data from that source into uh, my row zone in the data lake. So in the row zone, basically I have just built a specific structure as master data and transaction data, as I told you previously. So under master data, if you just click on, if I just go to master data, you will see an year file, and inside the year file you will have a month file, and inside the month file you will have a day file. And so if you just dive into the day file, you will see all the entities that are loaded in this particular day. So for this demo, I'm just bringing in the entities, so the master tables, only the customer, person, and territory master tables. I'm not bringing anything else since this is just a demo. And if it would be the same structure if you go to transaction as well. So basically click on transaction, then you can go to year file, month file, day file, um, and you will see the transaction data that I have loaded, which are order detail and order header for this particular day. Usually transactional data should be loaded, should be ingested in an incremental data loading by following a incremental data loading technique. But so incremental data loading, for those who don't know, is where you just load the data that is not yet loaded into your data lake, um, or your modern data, you can call your modern data warehouse, uh, or where you load the data that are not yet loaded into your data lake, or you can call it a modern data warehouse. So that concept is not followed here because my data is pretty old and I can't really use those techniques here. So I just load it straight away, the entire data set from the source into my data lake just for demonstration purposes. Um, and that's about row. And if I move to stage for a bit, so in stage, you once again you have the data classified as master and transaction. So master data, you can see that I had consolidated the entities. I had consolidated the master data and into two entities. Previously, it was just with data preparation. Previously, you might have seen three master tables, but in here I had consolidated it to two as per our requirement, as uh, as per the current requirement, and as per the demo that I'll be showing in on data preparation. Um, so if you go to transaction, once again I had consolidated the order detail file into a single order detail file, and the order header file into a single sales packet file, uh, which which I had once again consolidated with the data preparation task. So I'll be showing you around that in the data preparation demo, but for now just keep this in mind how this is done. So I had just gone with my own structure for this, where if I show you in a staging, uh, under master data you have I have separate folders for entities and master data as well, and even for transaction I have separate folders for transaction entities, but I thought of not going for that in the row. um, no particular reason for that, but it's just that I so the data ingestion is where you load the data as is from the source, and every time your ETL or ETL or ELT or your pipeline is executed, you will have data as is back to the specific data lake for this data lake. So at that, since it's as data, personally I would prefer seeing all the entities under a single folder, so that I would know that for this particular day, for this particular year, for this particular month, for this particular date, that only these are the transaction tables that are loaded, and these are the master tables that are loaded. So that's why I had kept that structure. So there is no hard and fast rule saying that you should follow this kind of a structure or that kind of structure for a data lake. It's totally up to you to decide your data lake design according to your respective requirement. Uh, that's about it for when it comes to data storage. So let's get back to the slide deck, and let's go into our second demo, which is the data ingestion demo. So I'll just move straight into my Azure Data Factory. So before jumping right into data ingestion. I will just show you around what I had done here, around the parent pipeline, which is like the main pipeline around here. So this is where you do the data ingestion and data preparation. This is where you handle the uh, you can say this is where you handle the entire process from data ingestion to data preparation. So from here you can go drill basically, yeah, you can drill down or uh, dive into the ground base level pipelines which do the respective operations in a which does the respective operations. So let's do that with data ingestion so that you can get a better understanding. So I have the data ingestion main pipeline called and from in the main parent pipeline, and as I execute pipeline activity, so if I just click on that, I would be going to ingest main. Ingest main is the main pipeline in terms of data ingestion. You can see in here that you have it goes into two parts as master data ingestion and transactional data ingestion. And if I just take you through master data ingestion, you can see it goes to ingest master, which has all the master ingestion of all the master entities. And if I get you even if I take you to dive even right into it, even more right into it, you can see the copy activity, which is a simple copy activity that's used for the uh, uh, respective data ingestion. So for if these are base level pipelines that does the task, but the rest are referencing pipelines just to build that structure in a much more organized way. So the base level pipelines here are ingest territory to ingest territory data. Then you have the ingest person for ingesting the data from the person table, and you have the customer ingest customer to ingest a customer related data, and basically you ingest that into that row zone which I showed you in the previous demo. The copy activity is rather simple. It's one of the most commonly used activities in Azure Data Factory. I think it's safe to say that where you have the source sync, really simple mapping, and I don't think I have to explain all that. So it's just a simple copy activity that goes into data ingestion, and it's same with the transactional data here as well. But for these are the base pipelines of transactional data, as you see. uh, it follows the same thing here as well, but it's that's not how it should be. You have to make sure that they are incrementally loading, where the data that is not yet loaded into your data lake are only loaded rather than loading the entire data set. So in here, since I have a really low amount of data, and since my data load is pretty low, and since I have pretty old data, I haven't done such a thing, but ideally, incremental data loading should be implemented in these pipelines. Uh, that's it for the data ingestion from my end. So let's move right into the data preparation, which is the final demo. If I take you to data preparation, I would jump right into my data factory once again. And so Power Query once again. So we are back to the final demo today, and this is the Power Query demo, and this is the like the main demo in the entire session. So let me just take you through that. Um, so I had created three Power Query components, or you can say three Power Queries. Um, uh, for the in the respective Azure Data Factory. Um, I would start by showing you the Power Query territory, which is like the most basic. So I thought maybe I should start with that for a start. Um, so in here, you can see that uh, there are no much transformations or preparation happening. It's just that the unwanted colors are removed, columns are removed, and it's just a very basic stuff done. If you move into the Power Query, and just to keep you noted on a few things, user query is the data set that we sync that will be synced when the particular Power Query activity, when this Power Query activity is executed in a pipeline. So that is where the data, the user query data will be the data that will be fed in uh, to your to the respective location as the Power Query activity will be executed in a pipeline. And if you just click on this folder called ADF resource, that contains the source data that you take into account in order to do your data preparation. So at this stage, it's just one source data, just one source data component. You can say, yeah, component. And um, if you go to settings also, you can see that data set. It's just one data set, but you have definitely have the capability to have multiple data sets here. So it's just one data set. So it's a bit slow, I guess. No. Um, so this is basically uh, a very basic. It's you can say this is a very basic Power Query that is built in Azure Data Factory. Really simple, nothing much complex. And next, let's move into a bit complex scenario, which is PQ customer. Uh, PQ customer, as you can see, has two multiple data sources that are referred to PQ customer, and also actually this is taking a bit of time at the moment, since this is actually a preview feature, as I told you previously. Uh, yeah, now it's all right. Um, Okay, so in here, once again, you will see the data set that will be loaded when the pipeline when the pipeline activity is executed. Uh, if you move to the Power Query, there is a bit of Power Query here. Not the most complicated, but it's a bit complicated, I would say. So we have the source, basically source in the sense PQ customer, which is this table. Firstly, what it does is it takes the first table, which is the PQ customer, into account. Then after that, um, a merge query, a merge query is merge the merge query Power BI task is taken into account, and that join with the merge query. I'm sorry, it's not the Power BI task. It's actually the Power Query task. Sorry about that. Uh, Query task will be is used in here to join the customer table with the person table. So in here the table is joined, as you can see. um, After that, the necessary fields are expanded from the customer table, from the person table, and afterwards the unnecessary columns are taken off, and this data set is the final result. So that's just a bit of complex, a little bit of complex Power Query used there. Nothing much, but still nothing much. A bit of complexity because in here, because we are merging multiple, we are merging two data sets, we are merging two separate data sets, and we are doing we are engaging in data preparation with that. So this is the custom entity for you. And finally, let's move into the transaction. And finally, let's move into the sales transaction table for our final to talk about this final section as the final demo, which I will be, yeah. So basically, we'll be looking at the sales transaction table now. So a sales consolidated transaction table now. And in here, as you can see, once again multiple data sources, and you had done uh, a similar kind of Power Query steps compared to customer, but a little bit complex because certain values had to be replaced, renamed, reordered. So it had to be put in place a lot. So these are the tasks that are completed here, and this is the final data set that's taken from this. So basically, you have taken these two, merged them together, or you can say joined them together, and consolidated it into a single entity, as I showed you previously, an Azure Data Lake. I think yeah, I showed you previously an Azure Data Lake, how it that a single file is loaded for the stage location. So that is loaded by this. And I told you that three master data tables were ingested and only two were consolidated because uh, the person master table was used with the customer master table to get certain data, and afterwards it wasn't required, so that wasn't really you brought in separately. So the necessary fields were taken in from the person master table into the customer table, and the person master table was not really loaded into staging. uh, so that's a little um, idea for you on how the Power Query works here. I'll be showing you how to build a single Power Query in Azure Data Factory as well. But before that, let me show you how I have executed these data preparation pipelines. Once again, let's start from the very top, which is the parent pipeline. So from the parent pipeline, you can see the main pipeline for data preparation. So just click on that. So in here, you can see the all the pipelines that have data preparation tasks in them. So firstly, let's move into territory. And in territory, you can see that the Power Query activity is called. So how you call it is you can either use Power Query this way, and select the respective Power Query, or else you can let me just take this off. Or else what you can do is you can even go into the Power Query and just drag and drop it. So two ways to do it. Yeah, that's basically where something that's based on your comfortability. So as you can see, uh, I had just configured compute and the number of cores and everything, and just to aid the execution. And there is another tab called sync, which is basically where the data will be synced after the transform, after the data preparation that's done. So that's it's directed to the staging folder, staging zone, which I showed you previously. And also, uh, just if I just show you the rest of the pipelines that I have created. So I have created the sales pipeline, which follows the same thing almost, um, and customer pipeline, similar thing. And preparation pipeline is, as I told you previously, it's like the main data preparation pipeline, which executes all the data preparation, all the other pipelines with data preparation activities on it. So these are the base pipelines in here, as you can see, are prepare sales, prepare customer, and prepare territory. So these base pipelines are executed from prepare main. That's a little idea for you on how you can execute Power Query in a pipeline activity. Moving further, um, let's just create a really quick Power Query, just for you to get an understanding on how it should be done. Just click on new query, where you see the ellipsis under the Power Query preview. You see, when you click on the ellipsis, you see something called new Power Query. Click on that and you will be directed to the screen. So just give some name to your Power Query. I'll give it as Power Query 2, and just refer to a respective source. In this case, I'll be referring to PQ territory, which is something we had used, but this is something I'm just doing for you guys to get an understanding. You can have multiple data sets here as well as per the requirement, but I'll be not going taking things that far. And I would just click on OK. And this would take a little bit of time to load, and you will see the data, and you will see the data set here as I showed you with the Power Queries that were already created. It's getting a bit of time. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully not much. Yeah, so I had loaded that. So everything else from here is same as with what I created, what I have already created, just to do the data transformations. And the user query is the data set that will be finally loaded into the stage folder with the stage one. So everything else is similar to that. So that's it from my end for this when it comes to demos for this session. Thank you very much for everyone who joined my session, and thank you very much for the organizers for organizing this session, and thank you very much for the volunteers for their contribution on this session, on this event. Please scan through the QR code that you see in the screen and provide me with your valuable feedback. I just want to improve myself further and further and do a better job for the community in the future. So thank you very much, guys. And if you guys have any problems, have any questions, you guys can always reach me through LinkedIn. So thank you very much. Thank you.